the seventh chapter is so special. And thinking back on all the previous chapters that we've been through, and Tukram Prabhu mentioned this in that last class, that the first six chapters are, focusing on that the ABCs of spiritual life, that we're not this body, that we're spiritual beings, which in and of itself is so revolutionary. It's such a different concept of living. And for those of us that have been around for longer than a year, we hear this pretty often, but at least in my case, it doesn't hit me as hard as it did that first year of hearing that. And then, I just get complacent and used to the fact like, oh yeah, I'm spiritual. But then from that realization, if you actually have that realization, the natural consequence is that your whole life actually changes, because you now understand that you're not a material being, you're spiritual. And so the first six chapters focus on that, I would say, bomb that really just changes your whole life and the world, because the way that you see the world is the way that you think, and how you connect concepts, and I think even just your own journey through life. So then the seventh chapter is really the first time that Krishna, although he has thrown out little bits and pieces of him being God in the first six chapters, the seventh chapter, he really steps in and owns the fact that he is God, and he presents it to Arjuna, and hence all of us. And what I found so overwhelmingly amazing about this chapter is the fact that he not only states that he is God, but the first thing he says in that seventh chapter is how by thinking of him, by remembering him, then we can know everything there is to know, right? And so then he spends the rest of the seventh chapter giving us ideas, examples, like real concrete information about how it could actually happen. So that made me think also that, Buddhism is so huge, and it's such a new thing for neo-spiritualists. Like, don't think of anything, meditate silently. There's nothing to be, you just are. And then the summit of it all is to disintegrate and merge into nothing, right? And it's all negation. And here, Krishna's right off the bat challenging that. It's like, no, you have to think of me. And obviously, for him to be even saying this, he needs to be a person. So he's already stepping into the range, battling like that those theories of impersonalism, that he's not, that the highest state of the divine is not a person. He's saying, no, yes, of course I am. I'm even speaking, so in order to be able to speak, I have to be a person. That's indirectly stated. And then he goes on to give us so many examples in the way that we can think of him, because it's impossible to think or meditate on something if it doesn't have qualities, if it could not be related to something, if it doesn't have any substance or characteristics or energy or anything that could even attract us, because we're so distracted by the shininess of the material world, that I thought that first verse really drew my mind in. It's like, okay, Krishna's actually saying that we can actually think of him at all times. He really must have a good plan, because in order for me to think about one thing for more than 5 minutes, it's got to be really good. What's to speak of thinking of him forever, like developing that, right? And so he goes on to, explain how this isn't cheap. This is something that rarely one person comes to know him, if that. And how everything there is to know, materially speaking and spiritually speaking, he's going to give to us. And in this way, we can come to understand that he is the source of it all, material and spiritual. And that was also amazing, because really it I think it takes away that doubt or that loophole that some people could use to say that, okay, well, even though God, and Tukram Prabhu brought this up, even though God could have created this world, he doesn't necessarily need to be engaging with it, right? And so Krishna does bring up also the fact that he is here, is immanent, but also transcendent. He is the source of it all, but he's not bound by the modes that make up this world. And also he brings up pantheism and panentheism, right? The ideas that he everything he has made, but that doesn't mean that everything is him. So there is some division, there is some difference, and that was also something really new that Krishna introduced. He goes on to give us prescriptive and descriptive factors, or not factors, information about those people that can come to him very easily. There were 4 types, right? The distressed, those looking to get famous and rich, those that are curious, and those that are actually looking for the absolute truth. And then he went on to say the people that can't even come to him because they're not ready, not because he's not available, but because they're not ready. And then from there, he jumps into giving us an example of those 3 categories, or not those 3 exact categories, but of people that have a little bit of, inclination that they're pious, but they're not necessarily going to him. So those are the ones that are worshiping other things other than the supreme, right? So Krishna uses the word demigods, which we covered in our episode quite at length. And then those have small knowledge, right? And I thought that was so wonderful because Krishna is really focusing on the power of our mind and how our mind can be an offering to him, right? Since the very beginning of this chapter. And so when he's talking about, those having a little bit of knowledge, those are the ones that are coming or going to other things or other representatives, but not the supreme person. But then he goes on to say, and those that have no knowledge, those are that the knowledge have been stolen by materialism, they are atheists. They don't even understand. They're not ready. They can't understand me. They won't. And then those that have complete knowledge or intelligence, they surrender onto me because they have understood that I'm behind everything and I'm it. There's nothing else to it than that. And so that was pretty powerful. Like I said, it was descriptive and prescriptive, right? To know what to stay away from and what to really lean into. And also seeing how Krishna is so merciful, that he gives us any opportunity to step forward, even if it's through somebody else at the beginning. If we have a little bit of humility to even regard somebody as, oh, they can help me out, then he provides that opportunity for us to grow that faith and love and move forward in our spiritual life. Then towards the end of the 7th chapter, Krishna is speaking about, man, this is just such an amazing chapter. After those that are intelligent and they come to him, he talks about piety, and Tukram Prabhu gave a lot of detail about this, like how by being pious and following the regs, and I don't think this was last class, but it has been stated in previous classes, following the 4 regulative principles, being pious, living a life of like just purity or trying to cultivate purity, we're able to really be ready to receive that grace. And Krishna then hits us with, to those people that aren't on that path, I'm not available to them. They can't see me. I want to look for the exact wording because it really hit me hard. This is text 25. I am never manifest to the foolish and the unintelligent. For them, I am covered by my internal potency. And so I thought that this was such an amazing point, and I'm glad that Krishna talked about it, because it sounds like he's making himself unavailable on purpose. But then if we have been paying attention throughout, we understand that it's not that he's picking and choosing who he lets in, right? Like a click, but it's like he's just reciprocating, with the people according to where they're at. And so he makes himself, he those people that are not interested in having that top relationship, they can't see him, so they don't even know he's there, so they can't approach him. And then to finish it all off, Krishna focuses on those that are willing and wanting to give their lives for that absolute truth, and connecting with him. And those are the ones that are intelligent. They are preoccupied on how to attain liberation from the cycle of birth and death, which we're all suffering from, right? And then, he finishes off the chapter with having consciousness. So I know I went into the last two verses, which we're going to talk about today, but this is my synopsis of this chapter. I'm sure I'm missing so much, but these are the points that really shook me about this chapter, and what I really appreciated about Krishna bringing up. And yeah, I hope it was helpful.
Oh, I think you're
muted.
Thank you, Varangi. It was very valuable to hear your perspective of the chapter and your context. You highlighted a lot of, if not all, the very important points in a very easily digestible way. And unfortunately, I'm going to be the party pooper.
Please.
That takes away such a inspiring synopsis of the chapter that you just gave. And I'm going to turn it into something a little bit more depressing. So forgive me for that.
No, thank you.
This is not just random. It's a big part of the thing that Tukaram went over in class with us, and specifically about text 29, where Krishna is saying, intelligent persons who are endeavoring for liberation from old age and death take refuge in me. So unfortunately, or fortunately, I don't know which one to say, we don't really live our lives thinking I'm going to get old and die. We oftentimes talk about Maya. Maya is a Sanskrit word that means illusion, that which is false, contrary to that which is true. And we say that all life is Maya, that everything that we are dealing with here is an illusion, because to begin with, we are thinking we are the body and we are not. That in itself is an illusion. But then we are interacting with, potentially billions of people who are also thinking they're the body and mind, but they are not. So then our entire premise of existence on this planet is an illusion. That's what we mean by the word Maya. And then we really get caught up in it, right? We really get into it. Like, yes, I am a man, I am this, or a woman, or I am old and young, or whatever it may be. That's really who you are, and that's how you live your life according to that. That's Maya. And what Krishna is saying here, an intelligent person who is endeavoring for liberation from old age and death. I don't live my life that way. In fact, there have been many arguments which I've heard in Krishna consciousness that in the beginning didn't make sense to me. But then I sat with the topic long enough, and by the grace of our teachers, I came to understand many of the concepts, starting with free will. And it was a hard topic for me to understand. However, the idea that we should live our lives as if tomorrow is my last day is something that is recommended. Our teachers will tell us, look, you never know when you're going to die, and therefore you should strive to make as much spiritual progress as you can today, and not postpone that which matters the most for anything else that matters the least. To this day, after a decade or so in following this spiritual path of ours, I still struggle with that, because in my rational mind, I tell myself the following: statistically speaking, it is very unlikely that I'm going to die tomorrow. I my family and I, we try to be very mindful of what we eat, to eat healthy stuff. We pay attention to our sleeping schedule. We pay attention to our exercising routines. We do our best to live a healthy life so that our bodies are healthy. And therefore, I truly believe, yes, there's a small chance that I may die tomorrow, but I really don't think so. I don't live my life thinking that way. And in fact, statistically speaking, we are dying at around between 72 and 80 years old, and I'm only 42. So I got at least another 40, I'm thinking, given my lifestyle on the physical and spiritual platform. I therefore believe that, hey, I got another 40 years ahead of me at least. And I truly believe that. I'm not just trying to make a point here that sounds good. That's really how I see my life. But Krishna is then saying, but those who are intelligent are endeavoring for liberation from old age and death, which implies the hidden premise, the unstated premise there is that myself and anybody else who thinks that we may not die tomorrow, we are very unintelligent because Krishna is saying the intelligent person is thinking, hey, I'm going to endeavor for liberation from death. And I'm not thinking that way, or even old age. And at 42 and being an ex-basketball player, I truly now understand the limitations of my physical body much better than before, because at 19, 18, 21, playing basketball, I could run and jump and dunk and play 3, 4 basketball games in the same day and then be ready to do it all over again the next day. At 42, that's not the case. I play one game and it takes me a week to recover. So I am very aware of the beginning of the signs of old age, but it's going to get much worse. And of that, there is no doubt. We are going to get old and we are going to die, but we don't live our lives that way. And that's what Tukaram introduced or covered in our class. That is the concept of the functional atheist. And the reason how it ties in with this chapter is that's how Varangi so expertly summarized the chapter for us and highlighted how Krishna in the theistic approach or understanding, it's really highlighted in this chapter. Krishna becomes the center of it all. It's not just the do your duty, but don't be attached to the results that we covered in the first 6 chapters. But now, look, I am even the tasting water. I'm so connected to everything. And how can we ignore that fact? So it becomes very, very theistic. But still, I ignore that fact because I'm living my life as if I'm not going to die, as if I'm not going to get old. And I just don't think of Krishna as being this being that he's saying he is, who is even like in the water that I'm drinking, I'm tasting him. And so the functional atheist is me. I'm thinking, at tomorrow I got duties, I got stuff to do, but I'm not necessarily thinking of Krishna 100% of the times. But then something like death does takes us there, right? Because now, okay, I'm about to die. In fact, we have one of our students in class is suffering from a pretty bad disease. And Tukaram even brought it up, like, how do you feel right now? And he's like, yes, death is prominent and I'm thinking about it a lot. But then this weird phenomenon happened. When we recover, when we get better, we go right back into the mindset that I'm not actually going to die tomorrow. But that's the platform that we actually live in. So Krishna is saying intelligent people will strive for that. How come we don't? Like, what makes us unintelligent? What makes us disregard death and old age? The illusion that we strive for in the material life, that I'm going to be happy here. I am going to make it. I am going to find peace and love and power and money. And this is going to be a cozy place for me to live. And that's what's worthwhile pursuing, because my groupthink my group identity, which means everybody around me, my country, my society, etc. That's where everybody else is thinking. So I'm going to think and live my life that way. So I think I told you I was going to be a little bit depressive. So the thing is, unfortunately, if we are not intelligent, where we truly understand we are not these bodies and we are going to get old and we are going to die, and that in itself would be a force, an impetus for us to strive for spiritual activities. But that would require us to be intelligent, and that's what Krishna is saying. And what I wanted to address here to finish it off, the point that I'm trying to make here, and it's getting quite long on text 29, is that why is it, besides Maya, the illusion that we live thinking that we are the body, why is it that even though death is certain and old age is certain, we don't take it seriously? We don't even think about it. In fact, I have arguments to go against that. I say, hey, statistically speaking, it's very unlikely that I'm going to die tomorrow. So therefore, justifying not having to think about it. So then I was thinking, first of all, for myself, what are the things that helps me get grounded in that fact, which should have as a consequence, it should increase my endeavor in spiritual activities. So, and it's one thing actually I heard from our teacher, Tukaram. Actually, there are two. So one is that if we have desires, which we all do, and we have been striving to fulfill them in this lifetime, in this body, in this planet, but we are not yet satisfied, it means that our desires are then truly meant to be fulfilled in a realm which is beyond the physical and the material. It's not here. So that gives me some not comfort, but it gives me some motivation to say, like really, I'm really not this body. I'm really not what I think I am here, living my life materially speaking, because I have all these desires and I have accomplished many of them. And it's still, there's more that I want. I'm not truly fully satisfied. So then I've been taking inventory of me and people around me and what people have been able to accomplish. And it's very little things that we all want. We want money, power, intellectual power, or whatever. We want a romance and the feeling of love and being loved. But we don't really find those things here perpetually or satisfying in a way that truly satisfy our hearts. That to me is an indication that that satisfaction that we're really looking for lies beyond the material in a spiritual realm. And that's really where I should strive to go to be a part of, because it proves that I'm not meant to fulfill my desires here. And the other point is that truly, we can perceive that there is continuity to consciousness, even though the body has changed. And therefore, the default position is that our consciousness is no longer dependent on the body. And it's truly not logical to conclude that with the death, the body is the end of myself. And therefore, there's something that will survive. And that's really truly who I am, my consciousness. And that also is a point that gives me, that grounds me in this fact, that I am going to die, I am going to get old. And if not by intelligence that is given to me by grace, at least these 2 points fixes me in that reality a little bit more. So I just wanted to bring this more depressive, not depressive, but actually
realistic
points.
Yeah, thank you both. Rangi, I really enjoyed your introduction. I thought it was like a beautiful journey through the first 7 chapters of the Gita. You touched on all the major points, like Tadeo said. I really enjoyed that. And then, as you were talking, Tadeo, I was thinking, well, what if someone's listening to this for the first time and they are thinking, well, if I focus on death and dying and old age, then that's just depressing. And I'd like to find some happy middle ground between the 2 perspectives of, yes, using death and old age and disease as a catalyst for focusing on Krishna or focusing on God or spirituality to bring you more happiness, actually. And it's not a depressing journey. And it's interesting because I have talked to family members about who are not really religious anymore. And I've talked to them about the fact that they're going to die and they're in their late 50s and 60s. And even at that age, they really are uncomfortable focusing on that because it's such a depressing and kind of a downer type of mood. And so I think that's what kind of keeps people from wanting to focus on that. But if we can get them to push through that and see that there actually is more happiness and joy on the other side of spirituality and pursuing um, the source of all things. And if we really accept or understand that there is a source of everything and wanting to know that source and how that can actually bring a lot of joy to our lives for the remainder of our dying days, so to speak. So, but I just really enjoyed both of your guys' input.
Thank you.
This is a problem with this text as I see it, because the first word is intelligent persons. So an intelligent person is actually striving to give liberation from old age and death, not Tesla stock to make you money. So it's really, I mean, that's what Krishna is saying. An intelligent person is going to be trying to get rid of death. Like, and if you're not living your life like that, then what does that make you? It's implied that you're unintelligent because it's obvious that it's going to happen and you're not taking it seriously. And so it's a sobering verse to me. You know, it's like, hey, Krishna is saying you should be considering these points because you're going to be an intelligent person. Now, the good news is I do have a way to make less of a downer and perhaps elaborate on something a little bit more inspiring, which I believe to be the main difference between Christianity and Vaishnavism, which is who we are, right? The Hare Krishnas, is that the main impetus in Christianity, from my point of view, there could be many Christians out there, legitimate, genuine Christians who would disagree with me. But I would say that in a very large sector of Christianity, the main impetus for you to pursue Jesus and accept him is really to escape eternal hell. Because if you don't do these things, you're going to go to hell forever. And who wants that? Hell is a terrible place and forever is a long time. So you don't want to be in a really bad place for a really long time. And even psychologically speaking, we know humans will do more to avoid pain than to achieve pleasure. So to say you're going to go to hell forever, well, I'll do anything to escape that. But in Krishna consciousness, that's something that really attracted me. Our impetus is not to escape fear or pains and sufferings of eternal hell, but is actually to embrace the beauty and the love of Krishna. So it is a positive impetus. It is a positive energy that drives me towards Krishna. And so, yes, text 29 can be seen as a theistic or a atheistic verse. Well, not atheistic, because Krishna says, take refuge in me. But it is also said that spiritualists that do not have a theistic concept of absolute truth also realize that they are the soul, that they're not the body, and that there's a transcendent realm from where we are, and they can strive to go there, not necessarily having a conception of God. But here it's much higher, it's much bigger, because we are thinking about loving Krishna is a positive motivation rather than a negative one. So we can take this approach to think about death, that be the reason why we strive for spirituality, or we can also think about Krishna and how loving and beautiful he is, and have that be our motivation.
Brilliant. I love this. I love when you bring up something real and problematize a certain part of text, because really that's where we start growing or like learning how to apply spiritual text to like real life. I'd like to offer a solution to your sobering interpretation, which I think is spot on. It's so true. I think that we become paralyzed either in moving forward or in not changing something negative. That's like we just become comfortable, or we become like, okay, well, I'm not there, so this works for me. So this solution that I'm about to offer, I think it's worked for me, and I think for all of us in spiritual lives and that have a spiritual practice, and it'll help us from getting paralyzed in our situation or in the way that we could potentially perceive a spiritual practice. And this solution is that there is a hierarchy. There is a process. What is that? Tukram calls it
thread of continuity.
No, it's like a process, but it's a progressive, kind of like a number line. You know, like the zero, then
Timeline?
positive. Yeah, there's another word he uses. I don't know, like it's escaping me. Anyway, kind of like a number line where there's a zero, positive numbers, negative numbers, right? You move right, progress, left, and then if you stay in zero, you're stagnant. So there, spirituality can be regarded such as this time number line, where we first have to know where we are. And most of us, I would say all of us, are in different places in that number line, right? And so we can't, if our mentality is so that we compare other people so that we can feel more depressed, then please don't compare yourself. But if our mentality is such that we get inspiration by comparing ourselves to other people, then yeah, it's a positive thing. And so what I'm offering is, instead of thinking of spirituality as, okay, I need to be intelligent, and intelligent means 100% devoting my whole waking hours and sleeping hours to figuring out how to get out of this cycle of birth and death and disease and old age, then okay, I'm not intelligent, I'm stupid, and okay, I can't do that, so I'm just not going to even try because I'm not even there, right? And so to not put yourself in that, like almost like breaking your legs, spiritually speaking, realizing that that is where we want to go and not necessarily where we're at, but at the same time, hey, where else could I be if I wasn't moving forward in my spiritual life, could be very helpful. So I know I haven't done a good job at being super clear about it, so let me try again. For somebody that's just starting out, let's say it's the first timer that's listening to this episode, and we're talking about, we just went through the 7th chapter where Krishna's saying, hey, I'm the source of it all, and you can't see me if you don't want to, if we're just gonna summarize it into those two. And I also heard about death and how being intelligent means to get out of that cycle of birth and death, old age and disease. Well, I'm not there either, but I do have a desire to know who the source of it all is. And I do pretty bad things, not bad, but things that are not like helpful for spiritual life. But I want to kind of progress and like do something, but maybe not too much because I'm just not ready to go to church every day, or, chant for 2 hours a day, or stop, having sex with my boyfriend or girlfriend, or whatever it is, it may be. It is very helpful to just know that where you're at, like you said, like Tadeo Prabhu just said, taking inventory. What are the things that we have that are not really helpful for a spiritual life? What are those coping mechanisms that are healthier than other things that we may fall prey to when things get hard? And what is our goal? And I know Tukram Prabhu has talked about this so much, and he often brings it up when he's bringing up a sobering point or a sobering text, which is, hey, we all have desires, like Sosa Prabhu said. Okay, but you dabble, right? You dabble into materialism. Like he's even given this example, which I appreciate so much. He has Krishna consciousness, he's hanging on to it tight. Obviously, his example is much more elevated because he's such an amazing spiritualist, but for whatever that means to us in our own little process, but he's hanging on to that truth, and he's just dabbling into other things that are not super detrimental to spirituality, but are just more like they're fun, you know, whatever that is, having kids, having a job, starting your own business, going to school for whatever, anthropology, just things that may not be regarded directly as like God consciousness or getting out of materialism, but it's still part of your desire. So you're hanging on to that truth. You know, this is where you want to move it forward to your goal, and you're dabbling in. But once one of those things start taking you too far from this goal, then you pull back. And I thought that's really the formula to making it, because most of us are not ready to drop it all. We actually wouldn't be able to drop it all, even if we wanted to, you know? So it's, you dabble, you do things, you stay anchored, you know, and the things that you're learning, the knowledge that you're getting from your teachers, reading these texts and going to those dark places of thinking about death, of thinking about that everything you have is going to fade, that your family is not going to go with you when you leave your body, that all the stocks that you have been investing and spending so much time into are going to actually stay there when you leave your body, that all the time you spend watching videos and social media and growing your followers, it's going to go away once you leave your body. I think it's so important to go to those places, to sit with that truth, because that's actually the truth. And at the same time, not let that paralyze us enough to not be able to get up the next morning to go to work, to go exercise, to go spend time with our family members, to make money, because it's needed. I mean, we're yogis, we're in this world, but we have to figure out a way to not become of it, to become entangled. So what I see here, one of them, it was just to share with you what Tukram has taught us, which is, you know, dabble, but don't go too far, and make those buckets. These are the things that you really should get over, like ASAP. These are the things that are not so bad, but don't spend too much time developing these anymore. And these are the things that will take us forward. Let's spend most time trying to develop these so we can naturally let go of these other two buckets, not artificially, but naturally, like you said, finding out a higher taste, right? Like something like a positive motivation towards Krishna. And so that, and then the second point was just, you know, we are where we're at, and we have to be able to go to those difficult conversations and sit with them and feel uncomfortable and feel sad and feel depressed. And he even brought it up on the last class. He was saying, you know, something interesting that that science has found out about people that are depressive, like clinically depressed, is the fact that they have the inability to actually be an illusion as much as the rest of us. And that was so powerful to hear, because I was like, wow, I always thought, man, you have depression, I'm so sorry. But it's like, if you are connected to spirituality, you can really like milk that. It's like, yeah, I tend to be depressive, but I have spirituality, I have a higher goal, I have some knowledge, I want to keep moving forward to that knowledge. Let me use that natural state of being depressed to fuel that motivation, that hunger to develop my spirituality. So anyway, I thought that was really wonderful. So yeah, it's who should we actually feel bad for, right? Those of us that can easily be deceived and in illusion and forget that we're not meant to be here, that this isn't our home. One more point, if you guys want to reply to that or correct me on any of the things that I have said, please do. But I do have one more thing, connecting it to the other stuff that Tukram Prabhu talked about.
Well, no corrections here, only curiosity to hear. What is the other point?
Yeah. I was thinking after his class, because he did talk about the current affairs and the current state of our sad country, politically speaking, right now. And I was thinking that, you know, he mentioned this, all these people and that get so carried away by a certain concept, you know, they genuinely think this is what I need to devote my life to, my energy to, either for this person or for this movement, whatever political movement it is. And they devote everything they can and all their energy towards that. But then it fades, right? Because it's material. And so it was sobering to me, because one of the things I thought was, man, I wish I had that drive for Krishna. One of the things I thought, it's like, I wish I was that passionate about Krishna. Like, man, imagine like going to riot and like war for Krishna, and like really wake up every day and tweet about it and like talk about it on social media and like all these things, right? Like that consciousness, instead of like Trump consciousness, like Krishna consciousness, like about that. Or not even just Trump, but just any political figure or whatever you hold as like your demigod. So I felt really inspired by that and like embarrassed that I don't have that drive for something that I know is true. It's like, man, that sucks. Like, I want that. And then the second thought was like, if one of us even develops a little bit of that knowledge and that hankering and that passion and love for spirituality, we will never find ourselves in that extreme situation of what we have seen happen in our country the last few days. It's just impossible, because now you have, like, your consciousness has changed even just a little bit, and it's enough to really put things into perspective that even you going down that road isn't even an option anymore. And what I mean by that is, you know, in college, before I ran into the devotees that told me about Krishna, I was ready to take on the world politically. Like, oh my God, I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna do that, and I'm gonna go back to Colombia and be a president, and I'm gonna be the first woman president, and I'm gonna end poverty, and I'm gonna end like all these things. But just a few conversations about vegetarianism, about free will, about how God is actually good and hell doesn't exist, but I make my own hell. All the like just these little topics were enough to really kill that fire. And it saved my life. It's like I would have been out there, probably dead by now, if I would have continued on with my radical thing about politics. But now, you know, so it really craps on, excuse my language, your plans, material plans, just a little bit of spiritual knowledge. And then you start on a real path that takes longer. It's not as what is it, instant gratification. It's not as instantly gratifying as you going on a riot, or you, I don't know, whatever else materially you think you can do to change the world, but it's definitely more like it's actually the way to go. And so these 2 points just came up, and I was like, wow, it's really inspiring to see that we all as human and as spiritual beings have that natural inclination to devote our whole self to something. Some of us choose God, some of us don't. We choose something else. And I don't really have that for God. I really want to develop that, but I'm lazy. And then the other thing is like, man, I'm also being really protected. Just by cultivating a little bit of spirituality, I'm protected from going down that road, because it's really easy, at least for me, my personality and the way my mind works, to really like get all combative and like, let's do something to better the world. And how it's, you know, spirituality really protects you from becoming a slave to something else that may not be the real thing. And so I just wanted to share that. Thank you.
Thank you, Varangi. Very powerful points. And the alternatives that you proposed, that we hold on to the spiritual truth that we know is true, and we realize what are the things that are really hurting us, and let go of those things as soon as possible. and the things that it's kind of neutral. It's not necessarily going to take me towards Krishna, but it's not going to necessarily take me away from Krishna either. Just balance that, right? Like you can engage on those activities as long as it doesn't pose any risks to your spiritual pursuits. I thought that was very expert, that you brought that up. It's a really sober way of looking at it, because something that is very hurtful is the idea that, well, yes, I'm going to embrace it all right now. And my wife and I, we joke about this because I think our first year and a half in Krishna consciousness, we were like that. We stopped doing everything that we were told was bad, and we started doing everything that we were told was good. We were up at 4 a.m. because 4 a.m. is the best time to chant. So we're like, okay, so our clock set for 3:50. So then we wake up at 3:50, we, brush our teeth, and we're dressing all white. And then we go to the living room, and then we just get our beads and we chant 16 rounds straight, right? We did that, but for about 8 months. And that was one point, and I still remember as so close, so vividly in my mind. It was a Friday evening or something like that. And I came back from Friday afternoon. I came back from work, and I looked at her, and she looked at me, and was like, okay, so what are we going to do now? We were like, well, I don't know, like maybe we can chant some more rounds, or we can read the Bhagavad Gita again, or watch a Prabhupada video, and we were like, you know, just like go watch a movie somewhere. And then I was like, yeah, cool, let's do that. And we were all feeling that pressure, that it was too much. We were not ready for it yet. And then once we proposed to just like watch a movie and relax, it's like, oh goodness, I'm so glad that you were also feeling like that, So then we kind of let go, and we took steps, unfortunately, but backwards, But today is a more mature renunciation. That was a premature renunciation, and it does not work. So I'm very happy you brought that up, because if we embrace that mentality, it's not going to last long. You can't hold on to that for too long if you're not truly prepared. So I really like that you brought that up. It was very expert. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing your personal. I have some too. So thank you for sharing.
Kim, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm really loving this conversation with both of you. And I relate very much to the finding that place of where you actually are, working with that versus forcing something that's not there. And yeah, with the political state and the political climate that we're in, Trikram, probably what I really admire about him is that he never shies away from current events, never shies away from reality, what we're actually struggling with, where we actually are. And so he's had a lot of comments and observations about the political climate right now. And his class from last night, which is online on Trikram.das on Instagram, or the Long Beach Krishna Facebook page, it talked a lot about that these people are searching for something bigger than themselves. They believe that they are in a revolution, that they're going to save the country, that they are the only ones who can, and that they are really, it's part of a bigger thing, bigger than themselves. And that's ultimately what people are desiring. And it created a lot of empathy for me, understanding what they're feeling, their frustrations, and also, it reminded me of last week's class where we talked about the 4 types of people who come to seek God. And it really ties into that idea of knowing where you are. For some people, it's not going to be seeing that, oh, it's intelligence. I want to be intelligent. I look at, my family members where that phrase would not move the needle at all. Because they don't think that they're really that intelligent, and that's never been their real niche, And so for some people, it might be hitting rock bottom, or so much suffering, they're seeking something else. Or for others, they have some spiritual inspiration. And so just trying to be there for someone at the right time, the right place, where they can get a little bit inspiration from us and be a catalyst in whatever way that we can for where we're at. that they can relate to us in some way. It just, it kind of makes me feel more relaxed, or I don't know if relax is a good word, but just more accepting of where I am, where other people are, and all these stages that people are in. It also reminds me of the episode we had talking about how Krishna gives us our devotion and all these experiences that we have where, okay, for the Trump people, they're learning about desiring something bigger. And in this lifetime, it might be, okay, their deity is Trump, but it's preparing them for cultivating the idea of worshiping something greater. Or for people who are in a loving relationship with a partner, maybe they're not cultivating a loving relationship with Krishna, but it's creating that experience for them where everything, all of our experiences here are preparing us for that ultimate relationship with Krishna. So if it's not in this lifetime for some, then it won't be. But I really enjoyed Tukaram Prabhu's classes and on that concept of everything here prepares us for that ultimate relationship with Krishna, whether it's forgiveness, learning how to forgive someone here, learning how to forgive someone then in the spiritual world. And so, yeah, I really enjoyed this conversation today with both of you, and I got so much value out of it. So thank you.
I feel the same way. This was amazing.
Do we want to read the 30th text since it's the last text of the chapter?
29 and 30, right? Both of them?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, I'll just read both of them. So text 29, intelligent persons who are endeavoring for liberation from old age and death take refuge in me in devotional service. They are actually Brahman because they entirely know everything about transcendental activities. And text 30, those in full consciousness of me who know me, the Supreme Lord, to be the governing principle of the material manifestation of the demigods and of all the methods of sacrifice, can understand and know me, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, even at the time of death.
This text 30, something that jumps out at me so powerfully is that death is a pretty scary thing, as we were discussing earlier. And I mean, I've done this mental exercise many, many times, picturing myself in my deathbed and what would it be like, my family members around me, what kind of relationship would I want to have with them at that point? How would they be seeing me and thinking of me? And those people that I was fortunate enough to have a relationship in my life, what would all that be like? You know, and I've done that mental exercise a lot. And I can't say that it is only pleasant, because it's just, there are attachments. The more, even though we strive to be detached from material life and understand that it's only an illusion and not our permanent home, still, like, it's my family. Like, I feel it, like Veronica said, you know, you can't take your family members with you. So, but that's what I come to the conclusion. Like, I'm there, I'm looking at them, and I'm forced to say goodbye, and I do not want to. But there's nothing that I can do about it. I'm gonna go, and you guys will not, and we'll probably never see each other again. So that it's very emotional. You know, this is a very powerful experience. It's a very powerful thought experiment, and Krishna says something very bewildering here, that if you are conscious of him, if you know him in truth, who he is, the source of everything, of the demigods and sacrifices, etc., that you can know and understand him even at the time of death. So at that time, at that moment where you're going to lose everything, you actually have realized that you lost nothing, and that you going towards everything, which is Krishna himself, which is such a powerful antidote, that here I am struggling with death, but Krishna is right there on the other side. And at that moment of death, where if you do not have a spiritual foundation, you're going to be in despair, psychological despair, you actually just thinking about Krishna, you're knowing Krishna even at that crucial moment. And that's amazing, because I think, Veronica, you made this point. What is the motivation? Like, what is a powerful enough motivation to drive us, or to nullify the terrific the terrifying catastrophe of death, like it has to be something that is even more powerful than death, or the death experience itself, to nullify that effect and have us be focused in him. You know, so that's something that comes to me very powerfully when I read this text.
I love that you brought that up. I just, it's like, wow, it really also hit me, but you, I think you nailed it. And something that I was thinking about when you were ex explaining your thought process about death, when you're in that deathbed and your family's around, like I can't think of something higher than just my family. Like my family obviously extends to the devotees that have raised me, because they're much my parents as my biological parents. So my family members, there's nothing beyond that. Like I don't want to leave them, I love them so much. And I was thinking about the concept that we think that because we're spiritual and we leave this body, then we move on towards Krishna, and you even mentioned this, we're never going to see them again, possibly, is the fact that actually that's not the case. The best way we can stay connected to our family members, and the best way we can actually help them and love them, is by us becoming devotees ourselves. We have in the Srimad Bhagavatam, we hear how this amazing devotee of Krishna is ready to leave material life, and he's about to get on a spiritual airplane to go home to Krishna, which is all he's ever wanted. And he remembers his sweet mother. And just because he's a pure devotee, and he loves his mother, he thinks about her at that second, and he's like, well, I don't want to leave my mom. Can my mom come? And Krishna fully gives his mom also a free ride. Free, right? Now, of course, the mother is also an amazing, exalted soul, but the fact that she's connected to this pure devotee, she gets to go home as well. And so when I read these things, when I think about spirituality, it's not that, oh, it's so cruel that we have to leave everything for Krishna. It's like Krishna's this weird, narcissist that just wants us. And then like, what about our relationships? No, it's like this beautiful thing, and you nailed it. You said, you have all that and more. You have it all with Krishna. And to be able to remember Krishna at the time of death means that you have worked to cultivate that habit of thinking about Krishna. And Krishna also, because he's a person and he's all good, he makes it possible for us to think about him. He reveals himself because that's our deepest desire. And because we have that desire, our family members also benefit from that. And it's like when I remember those things, like, wow, actually, if I continue to stay close to the devotees, if I continue to do my little tiny part, even though it's not perfect, Krishna is reciprocating, the devotees are reciprocating. And that's the best thing I can leave my family, because they're going to be benefited by my tiny efforts, because Krishna is so good and the devotees are so good. So they're going to bless them too. It's like, there's no loss. It's so crazy. It's like, I don't think it's something that you can compare to anything else in the world. I'm thinking stocks and investments, but no, you have to, even that you can lose. If the market goes down, you lose everything. So your efforts are wasted. But spiritual life is not like that. And other people that have never done anything for spirituality, they get the best benefit if you have, and they're related to you. That like blows my mind. I'm like, wow, how can somebody that has dedicated their lives to womanizing and eating meat and being drunk and doing drugs and being not a good person, how can they just like get the best prize? Oh, because they're connected to somebody that has, and Krishna is so good that because they're related, he gives them that benefit as well. So there's nothing else better that we can do for our family members and our country and whatever else than to become Krishna conscious or God conscious. And that's like, well, I often forget that, but you reminded me of that pastime from the Srimad Bhagavatam when you mentioned the deathbed and family members around. I was like, wow, that is true. I forget that so much. It's like, wow, it's going to be so hard to leave, but it's not, because Krishna also takes them with us. How cool. Anyway.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you
you
both. Well, we are at the end, and once again, I encourage everyone to tune in to Tukaram Prabhu's weekly Friday night Gita class. They're all online, and the info is in the details below, and we look forward to seeing you again next week. So thank you guys. Haribol.
Hare Krishna.